How do you recognise a good tipster? That's what we're going to cover in this video. A tipster is someone who shares their bets either free of charge or for a fee. The practice of following tipsters has become more and more popular in recent years, enabling even the least experienced gamblers to invest in sports betting. That makes it essential to know how to scientifically distinguish between good and bad tipsters. To do this, you first of all need to know how to tell the difference between a winning and a losing profile. Then you also need to consider if the tips will be profitable for you as a follower. Let's take a look at the main elements to bear in mind. First of all, you need to be able to view a reliable betting record, meaning a betting record that cannot be doctored or altered afterwards, as an Excel file might be, for example. That is why we advise you to rely exclusively on betting records produced by third-party platforms, where it is impossible to alter the results. Solvbet, for example, uses the odds portal platform. When trying to determine if a tipster has a winning betting record, there are several factors to look out for, with the most important ones being the yield, the average odds, the number of bets, and the dropping odds. The yield refers to the average profit they make from their bets. For example, a yield of 10% means that, on average, they've earned €10 for every €100 they've bet. Some people also call it a return on investment, or ROI for short, and it is usually expressed as a percentage. You can calculate it using the following formula: net return divided by total bets times 100. It is difficult to precisely determine whether a yield is good or not, because that would depend on multiple factors. But to give you an idea, for Major League Football, a yield of 5% or above will be considered good. But yield cannot be looked at in absolute terms. It is actually crucial to calculate it using a substantial number of bets in order to reduce the level of variation. Using the number of bets is much more reliable and scientific than looking at the months or years of activity. We consider 1,000 bets the very least you should use to ensure that the sample is representative. The third element to consider is the average odds. The higher the odds, the greater the variance will be, which means that you need to use a larger sample to ensure that it is representative. Taking these three elements into account will enable you to calculate a statistic called p-value, which is a measure of the probability that a result could have occurred by chance. You can calculate this using free online spreadsheets. The final key element is dropping odds. Buying at higher odds than the closing odds usually indicates a good positioning, which should statistically generate profit in the long term. If a bettor has dropping odds of higher than 75%, even on a fairly small sample, he is likely a winning player. We will go into more detail about the concept of dropping odds in our next videos. Once you've identified a winning profile, you just need to know if their tips will be easy to follow and if they will be profitable or not. Aside from your personal preferences regarding price, sport, number of tips, betting methods, there are two fundamental elements to take into account: the type of market and the bookmaker. It is much easier to follow someone who bets on the major European leagues, as these markets are relatively more stable and are able to support high volumes and high stakes. In niche markets, the stakes are lower and the odds are much more susceptible to fluctuations, so it is difficult to bet at the same price as your tipster, as the odds will almost certainly have already dropped by the time you receive the tip. That also means it is worth looking at the yield in terms of different bookmakers. A winning profile on a leading bookmaker like Pinnacle will be much easier to follow than a winning profile that exclusively uses niche bookmakers, which are more likely to make errors with the odds and are more susceptible to fluctuations. As for us, we mainly bet on the major leagues, and you can view our official betting record on the odds portal platform. For a more detailed summary of our past results, take a look at our open access betting record, where we also give several free tips every month. At the time of recording this video, Solvbet has a 9.2% yield on 2,421 matches, with average odds of around 2.5. As this calculator shows, the probability of a result being due to chance is around 1 in 7,487. A result is generally considered relevant if the p-value is lower than 0.01. So a p-value of 0.0001 like ours indicates a very solid betting record. In practice, it is difficult for a follower to achieve the same performance as their tipster, as they would need to always take the same odds at the exact same time. To get a more realistic idea of your results as a follower, you should expect that your betting record will be slightly lower than that of the tipster. Let us know in the comments if you consider these points before following a tipster. Feel free to follow us on social media and check our offers at solvbet.com. All the links are in the description. As for me, I'll see you in the next video.